Owning a Lamborghini was a dream I worked decades for. I wasn't born with money. My grandfather was a farmer, my dad a machinist, and I worked my way up from odd jobs to building a successful contracting company. Every spare dollar I saved, every extra project I took, was for one goal: to one day park that low-slung, growling machine in my driveway. When I finally bought it, a candy apple red Aventador with exhaust that sounded like thunder, it wasn't just a car. It was proof that hard work pays off. The neighbors loved it. Kids begged for pictures. Families waved when I rolled by. Everyone appreciated it, except the HOA, and especially Karen. The letter arrived a week after I brought the car home. Notice of violation. Exotic vehicles are prohibited. You are fined $10,000 for violation of community standards. I thought it was a joke. I called the HOA office, but Karen answered herself, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "That car doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood," she said. "It's flashy. It lowers property values. Pay the fine or we'll escalate." I laughed. "It raises values, Karen. People love it." "Not in my community," she snapped, then hung up. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control. I refused to pay. Karen doubled down. Another letter came, threatening liens on my property. Then another, threatening towing, as if they had the equipment to tow a supercar. By month's end, she was bragging in board meetings that she'd teach me a lesson. But what Karen didn't know was that I'd been sitting on a trump card for years. See, my land didn't just touch the HOA's subdivision. It also bordered their pride and joy, a $6 million luxury resort the HOA had co-invested in. They'd spent fortunes building it. Infinity pool, spa, tennis courts, golf course. It was their cash cow, renting out for weddings and events. And right through the middle of it ran a waterway that originated on my land. Decades ago, Grandpa had diverted a creek into a controlled irrigation system. It wound through my fields, past the tree line, and fed straight into what the HOA later turned into their resort lake. That lake filled their fountains, their sprinklers, their golf course ponds, and I controlled the head gate. It sat behind my barn, an old cast-iron valve that could redirect the creek either toward their lake or into the overflow basin behind my ranch. Normally, I kept it open. No reason not to. But when Karen fined me $10,000 for owning a car I worked blood and sweat for, that was reason enough. I gave them one last warning. I stood up at the HOA meeting, Lamborghini keys in hand, and said, "You fined me $10,000. You want control? Fine. But you forgot one thing. I own the water." Karen sneered. "That's a bluff." I smiled. "Test me." 2 days later, I turned the valve. First, nobody noticed. The lake level dropped a few inches. The fountains sputtered. Karen sent a nasty email. "Maintenance failure. We're investigating." A week later, the pool pumps ran dry. Algae bloomed. The once blue resort lake turned murky green. Brides canceled weddings. Golfers demanded refunds. The HOA scrambled, trucking in water at absurd costs. But it wasn't enough. Then the rains came. With the valve closed, the creek diverted straight into my overflow basin. It swelled higher and higher until one stormy night it burst into the drainage channel, which ran downhill, right through the back of the resort. By morning, the golf course was a swamp. The spa was underwater. The infinity pool was filled not with crystal-clear water, but with mud, silt, and snapping turtles carried in from the creek. Damages: $6 million minimum. The HOA panicked. They called an emergency meeting, screaming at each other, blaming acts of God. But the sheriff, my old friend, set the record straight. "Wasn't an act of God," he told them. "Was an act of ignorance. You fined a man over his car and forgot he controls the water rights. Been on the books since the 60s. Legal, binding, ironclad." Karen lost it. "Arrest him. He sabotaged us." The sheriff just chuckled. "Lady, he used his property as designed. You don't own his water. He does." The lawsuits started flying. Vendors sued the HOA. Guests demanded refunds. Insurance refused to cover preventable negligence tied to private disputes. In court, my lawyer Margaret, the HOA's worst nightmare, shredded them. "Exhibit A," she said, dropping county water rights documents on the judge's desk. "Exhibit B," she added, showing the fraudulent fines they'd levied against me. The judge leaned back, unimpressed with the HOA's excuses. "So let me get this straight. You fined this man $10,000 for parking a legal car in his own driveway, and in retaliation, he exercised lawful water rights you ignored for years." The HOA attorney stammered. "Well, technically, case dismissed," the judge snapped. The fallout was biblical. The resort never recovered. By the time repairs finished, its reputation was ruined. Couples went elsewhere. Golf memberships plummeted. The $6 million cash cow dried up, and with it, the HOA's golden goose. Dues skyrocketed to cover debts. Residents revolted. Karen was voted out so fast the ink on the ballots barely dried. I heard she had to sell her house at a massive loss just to escape the mountain of legal fees. And me? I paid nothing. Not a cent of that bogus $10,000 fine. Instead, I kept the Lamborghini polished, parked proudly in the driveway where everyone could see it. Sometimes I even revved it just to watch Karen twitch through her curtains before she moved out. But I didn't stop there. I donated part of the diverted water to the county fire department, letting them fill trucks for free. I opened the overflow basin for wildlife groups, who turned it into a sanctuary for birds and turtles. My revenge pond became a community landmark, loved by everyone except the people who tried to take me down. The sheriff stopped by one evening, leaning against the lembo, shaking his head with a grin. "You know, I've seen folks fight HOAs over mailboxes, over paint colors, over fence heights. But I've never seen anyone drown a $6 million resort just to prove a point." I smiled, listening to the Aventador's engine purr. "Sheriff," I said, "when they fined me for owning this car, they thought they were teaching me a lesson. Turns out I was the teacher." He laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. Karen thought a $10,000 fine would break me. Instead, it bankrupted her empire, destroyed their precious resort, and reminded everyone of a truth Grandpa taught me long ago. Don't mess with a man who owns the water.